Hi, everyone. Welcome to our show, Let's Talk Miami. I want to give a warm welcome to anybody that's listening for the first time. My name is Camila. I'm the creator of Let's Talk Miami. And this is a place where we're talking about local issues with some of the key stakeholders in our community. And we're talking about how can we solve some of these issues. And today, our topic is on the Miami tech buzz that we're all listening about in social media. It seems like everyone who's anybody is coming to Miami. And today we're talking about that with Matt Haggman. He's the executive vice president at the Beacon Council for One Community, One Goal. And previously he worked at the Knight Foundation, where he started a program to help support this tech scene and really to start it. And so, Matt, I want to give you a warm welcome to the show.
Thank you, Camilla. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining in and for your time to just talk about this. I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your role and how you started at the Knight Foundation with being involved in the tech industry.
Absolutely. So, obviously a big story right now is so many people coming from elsewhere here to Miami. And honestly, I was that person too at one point. I'm originally from Boston, and I came to Miami to work as a journalist. And I thought Miami would be a place that I would, come to and work at for a year or two and then be someplace else. Instead, I found a home. And believe it or not, it's crazy to say this. So in December, it'll be 20 years in Miami. So I don't know if that makes you get close to like native status, right? I mean,
yeah,
you start to get native. Right? 20 years, you're native, right? So, and I came here and I worked as a reporter for 10 years. And during that time, I met my wife, Danette. And so, and we live in Coconut Grove. And it was during that time as a reporter that I just grew so, fascinated by, interested in, and wanting to sort of be more engaged in the life of our community. I became more fascinated in and intrigued by the city and this community in Miami, this amazing sort of mashup of people from all over the world, and we're together making up a city. And so so I wanted to be more proactively involved in the life of the city. So I had this opportunity to go to Knight Foundation after 10 years being a journalist, most of that time at the Miami Herald, and went over to Knight and had this really interesting opportunity. The CEO, who's still at Knight now, said to me, he said, well, go talk to people and, for a couple months and tell me what we should do next in Miami. So this really interesting opportunity to think about our community and where to go next. And believe it or not, this was back in 2012, about 9 years ago.
Oh, and right after the recession.
Yeah, right after the recession, which I covered as a reporter. And so looked around and came back and said, you know what, I really think there's an opportunity around entrepreneurship. And at the time, that felt for Miami, that felt like, not just a little bit of a stretch, but a giant reach, right? And so, there have been other moments in the life of Miami and South Florida where tech and high growth entrepreneurship really become a thing. But at that point, it had really it was not at a place where if you looked at a map and thought, okay, where are the next really promising ecosystems going to be? A startup activity. Miami wasn't one of those places. And so, but we really thought that there was an opportunity. And the reason is number one, Miami is just such an entrepreneurial place, right? I mean, it's in the DNA, the launching, risking, going out on a limb, the hustle, all of that.
Immigrant community.
Right? That's Miami. And so we have that in such a big way. Furthermore, what we're seeing things about how the growth of the culture, the art and cultural community in Miami is becoming so cosmopolitan, international. The growth of the university system. You, as someone who came out of the MDC Honors College and FIU, that growth has been, incredible. And also the revitalization of the urban core, which is really, really important in attracting talent. As we've seen, downtown Miami is, hard to believe. I know when I first got here, it was quiet. It would pretty much, shut down at 5 o'clock. It was just this business district. There weren't a lot of restaurants, all of that. So,
and it was
for all those reasons,
after 5, it was a place where it would shut down.
Right? Exactly. So for all those reasons, thought, you know what? If we really put the time in and go about the long-term effort of building an ecosystem supporting high growth entrepreneurs, that we can do this. There can be a there. And so from then, all, for at least for me, while I was at Knight until 2017, did more than 200 grants of different shapes and sizes, finding ways to support and connect and propel entrepreneurs in Miami. And throughout that time, we saw this continued growth. But what's happened now is that, with COVID, as people look at a map and think about, and also sort of reprioritize where they want to live and work and what's important in their own life, that people are looking at a map and increasingly saying, Miami is a place where I want to be. An amazing quality of life, an amazing collection of people, and this incredible sense of possibility, right? I mean, the great thing about Miami is that we can each have our hand on sort of shaping the arc of our community, right? I mean, there's no waiting your turn in Miami. You can be part of creating it. And now we're in this another moment where sort of this effort that's been going on for some time has really accelerated. And like so many things, sort of COVID has served as an accelerant of existing trends. That's again the case here. And so this is a moment that we really need to make the most of it, as more and more people come here. And the great hope is that more and more people sort of root themselves here, and seeing this as a place to continue to grow businesses, to lead our lives, to engage in the community. And so it presents this really unique and important opportunity. And you asked about one community, one goal. So I just took a new role at Beacon Council, which is the economic development organization for the whole metropolitan area of Miami, right? For all of greater Miami, whether it's Doral or Miami Beach or Miami Gardens or city of Miami, all of that, Coral Gables, Homestead, all of that. And the Beacon Council is all its effort. You can sort of think in three parts. One is around recruiting companies and helping them expand in Miami. Two is around marketing the community, the business community. And three is an effort called One Community, One Goal. And One Community, One Goal is all about shaping Miami's economic future by identifying those core issues that are important to our community going forward, and then trying to rally a cross-section of stakeholders around addressing those issues. And it's that third prong, One Community, One Goal, that Mike Finney, the CEO, said, hey, what about you come on board and we'll and take this and let's reimagine One Community, One Goal, think about where we can take this platform and what we should focus on. So so for me, been having countless conversations around the community, trying to reach out widely, listen closely about what are those things going forward. And obviously right now with this frenzy of activity, which was, prompted by Mayor Suarez's "How can I help" tweet in December, we're in this moment. And so it's a really interesting time to think about where we go as a community, not only right now, but as we think about the next 5, 10, 15 years, what are those priorities that we should really be focused on, especially now in this moment of real opportunity and possibility.
Right. And one of the things that I think is good to highlight is that where we are right now isn't something that is just brand new. It's kind of been building up, as you had mentioned with your work at the Knight Foundation. Many organizations that are meant to help build the startup community have been coming and establishing themselves here in Miami, and even in our universities. We have Startup FIU, we have the Idea Center at Miami-Dade College.
We funded, when I was at Knight, we funded the launch of the Idea Center, and obviously very close at Startup FIU. You're absolutely right. I mean, those are all pieces of the ecosystem, and it's important right now as we try to really sort of maximize the opportunity in front of us right now. It's also important to remember this is a long game. Right? I've heard a lot of people saying, is this moment real? All of that. I think we maximize this moment to its very fullest. But we also keep in mind that we're in it for the long haul, and we're going to just keep on building.
And when you say to take advantage of this moment, like, and I had read your article where you're saying we're poised to take off. What does that look like for Miami? Like, what are you guys envisioning?
Well, let's take you as an example, Camille. Right? So graduate, Coral Gables High School graduate, the IB program, Miami-Dade Honors College, FIU grad 2016, right? You are, so, and when we say maximize this moment, honestly, I think you, right? And think about how someone like yourself growing up in Shenandoah, sitting in Shenandoah right now in your podcast studio, and thinking about, so that maximizing this moment is just that this is a place where you would want to be. So you feel like there's a real sense of possibility about Miami. It's like you're thinking that this is where, you know, where my ambitions can be realized, where I find I'm intrigued and interested by the place. So that's, number one. Number two is that there are those real tangible opportunities, right? That with, the idea of having a really robust startup community is that important problems are being solved and that opportunity is expanding, right? That we're seeing more companies launched and scaled. And so someone like yourself has more opportunities for jobs and growth, right? As you build your professional life. So I would latch on to those two things at the outset. Number one, it's just a place that excites, right? It's a place that you think is really cool and interesting. And it's like, I want to do things in that place. And it may be, I don't know what those things are, but that's the place I want to be.
And then you want to be a part of it.
You want to be a part of it. And then the second thing I think is that it actually provides real opportunities, right? That there are more opportunities for someone like yourself for a job that you want to be part of, or say if you want to go out and start something that you feel like you have the resources around you. I mean, that's what a startup ecosystem is. You are able to connect to people and feel a sense of community. You're able to find mentors who can help support you as you're thinking through an idea or getting through some rough patches with your business, your life. You're able to find the funding you need to fuel your venture. You're able to find the talent that you need, right? Those are all the things that are critical to any ecosystem. And so the hope would be in maximizing this moment, we're building in all of those areas.
Right.
And that you, as you see your future, want to stay here and keep building here.
Yes, that is true. There was, for a long time, it was called the brain drain, where people were graduating from here, from Miami, but they were leaving.
Well, Camilla, I mean, that was, I mentioned the whole story when I was at Knight Foundation, when I arrived there and was given this task of thinking new about our community, what should we focus on? Honestly, as I thought about problems to solve, the problem that kept coming up was brain drain, right? That was the thing people kept saying. So it was sort of orienting around, I did this with someone named Ben Wers. And as Ben and I were talking about it, about what to do and what to focus on at Knight, in terms of solving the brain drain issue, we actually thought of one way to do it was a focus on building an ecosystem supporting high growth entrepreneurs. And so hopefully over time that proves out, and you're exhibit A here. It's sort of where you go and how you might.
Well, I might be, but there are many young people, at least I have a lot of friends that are having to leave because still there aren't the jobs to get them hired here in Miami. Like people they want to stay in Miami. It's like we're always in this push and pull kind of where we love Miami, our family's here, we want to stay here, but the jobs just aren't there, or the money that we expect to get isn't there. And so it still is a problem, I would say.
We're a work in progress. And that's I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
And so, but that is right there when you're talking about how to maximize this moment, that's a metric to look at, right? You think that's a KPI,
right?
Is that, think of your network of friends. Are you beginning to see some come back? Right. Are you still seeing friends leaving? Are friends not able to find the sort of jobs that they want or the sort of community that they're looking for? I think those are all the things as we talk about maximizing this moment. That's how we measure it.
One of the questions that we got from a follower was, this tech buzz is something that intrigues me, but one of the things that I'm skeptical about is why now? Why all of a sudden this huge acceleration to grow? Why can't we maintain the sustainable growth that we've been having? Like, why do we need to just dive so deeply into this?
So I'd say two things. One is growth isn't on a straight line, right? And by that I mean there's going to be moments actually where we plateau, go down, and moments when we spike. Right. The hope is that over time we're pointing up and to the right. right? And so that's the hope. But growth isn't, it's not a straight line. And so that's part of it. The second thing is why now, right? Why do we suddenly see where we've been seeing this growth, right? I mean, we've been seeing now some really interesting startups here in South Florida. I mean, in Brickell, we've had, 8 years or so thereabouts, watching the growth of a startup called Reef, which has raised more than $2 billion, and they're growing and hiring, in Brickell right now. Or here in South Florida, we saw a startup launched in 2011, Chewy, which exited and had an IPO and is now valued at more than $40 billion. So we've been seeing this really interesting startup activity and seeing companies grow in really interesting ways. And there are more. Those are just two examples.
Right.
But why now at this moment? And the first answer is COVID, right? I mean, COVID is something that has prompted people just to rethink where they want to be, how they work, where they work, what they prioritize, right? What we prioritize. And the second is around remote working, right? That is, while someone who has lots of means can up and move and, move to a place like Miami and buy a great place, which is awesome. And we're thrilled they're here. For others with jobs, that's obviously harder because you need to be near work. Well, now with remote working and now allowing, both the combination of Zoom plus employers due to COVID allowing employees to be outside of the office, that's allowing people to be in a place like Miami. And so that all of that then of course, I think, Miami has arrived in so many ways. It's such a cool place to be. I was on a call the other day and someone said, feels like Miami and Austin are the two big winners of COVID in terms of where people are going, right? And so COVID has really served. And then, of course, there is without a doubt that with Mayor Suarez on Twitter has so connected with the tech community in Silicon Valley and also New York. And elsewhere too, but for sure in the Valley in San Francisco, that has then served as, that has served to further accelerate this really remarkable trend as we're seeing more and more people come here and think about Miami. Now, going forward, the hope is that many choose to stay, that this is a community that they want to be part of. And, that they want to build great businesses, be involved in our communities, and build awesome relationships. And I think ultimately it's, it'll be that is a determinant of how many choose to ultimately stay here, is building those relationships, building those friendships, and seeing this as a place that you really want to invest in the long term. And I think that one of the great things about Miami, I experienced it myself, and I think in this moment that is so critical, which of course is happening, is Miami to continue to be that place that that welcomes people with open arms, a big heart, and an open mind. And I know I found that when I got here, people were so welcoming, and so as more and more people come here, it's like we're thrilled that they're here. And that and that's also been throughout the years with Miami. It's been successive groups of people coming here who have then reinvented the city. And that's to me, the interesting thing about one of the interesting things about Miami, how it's constantly open to reinvention, right? It's not holding on to a history. It's not holding on to specific traditions. It's really open to new things, which is in a way sort of a great quality for a place that really aspires to being a center of innovation in its own right.
True. And I love how you talked about Silicon Valley with Francis Suarez tweets. And that's one of the things that people, when they hear Silicon Valley, and you're right, people in Miami don't really have a model of what Miami should be. But I think most people here in Miami do not want to become the next Silicon Valley. They want to be Miami, whatever that means, but 100%. It's not Silicon Valley. And hearing that all of these new companies from Silicon Valley are coming, people are saying, hold up a second.
Right.
We don't want you to be messing with our identity, but other than that, we also don't want you to come and bring or worsen, I should say, the problems that we have here in Miami, which is the affordability crisis. You see in San Francisco that a small room costs like $3,000. And here in Miami, we already have residents that are paying over 30% of their income are in rent, their cost burden. So they're saying, okay, you're bringing those companies that have left San Francisco in this huge affordability crisis, homelessness. Is that coming along with them here when we already are kind of already dealing with that? Not at that scale yet, but it seems like, are we projecting that crisis to follow San Francisco?
So I remember, this was back when I was at Eighth Foundation. I remember giving a talk, and the lead of the talk is, we don't want to become the next San Francisco, right? This was like 4 years ago, and the reason why I said that was because just what you said, right? You can be a place that is a center of innovation, that is building incredible companies, but you can also be, in doing that, you don't want to be a place that exacerbates inequity, right? And sees the economic and social divides get even greater. And we're a place that already has huge economic and social divides,
yeah,
right? I mean, we're a place already where that's a real issue. And so I guess, the way I think about the answer to your question is, one, we have to be our own thing. We don't want to be the Valley. We don't want to be, we are Miami, and what we are working to do is to be a place, a center of innovation in its own right, of our own right, in Miami, right? A place that's solving interesting problems. But as we do it in a way that speaks to us, that is by, for the community. So when I say, on the one hand, we need to be as we are, and that is a community that welcomes people wherever they might come from, with a big hug, an open mind, a warm heart, all of that, right? We also, though, I think that from the very beginning of the work of building Miami's ecosystem, startup ecosystem, we've really leaned in on the fact that we don't want to be San Francisco, and that we want to be about the entire community. And furthermore, that feeling that innovation is built on a diversity of people and ideas, and that so that the more people who are included, the more innovative we'll be, and the more success we'll have, right? And so really, and also knowing that to achieve real diversity and inclusion, that's about being intentional, right? That's about reaching across the community, being in the neighborhoods, right? And continuing to be very intentional about expanding opportunity across our community. So while on the one hand, we of course want to be who we are, and that's always having that amazing welcoming spirit and forward-looking spirit, alongside that, in tandem, is continue to lean on the fact that we're about that building a startup community that is built on diversity and inclusion, and the belief that innovation is built on diversity and inclusion, that remains sort of central to the entire effort. But I think we can do both. I think that is totally achievable.
And so then my follow-up question to that is, so you're saying to be intentional, but how do we do that as a community? Like, how do we ensure that happens?
So there are a couple ways. One is you can do it on a personal level, right? Two, you can do it sort of on a community level. And three, you can do it more on an institutional level, right? So what does that look like? Like us as individuals, thinking about, as we're making introductions to people who are coming, or we are to being sure that we're connecting across, our own networks in a way that is really reaching across the community, right? Just in terms of the decisions we make, the places we go, right? The friendships we build, right? All of those things go into it. Those are personal decisions we each make. Then at a community level, things, that I remember at night providing the funding to start something called Black Tech Week, which is now called the Center for Black Innovation, right? Ensuring as a community that organizations that are intentionally focused on diversity and inclusion, and ensuring that opportunity is spread across our community, that making that a priority, right? Connecting with Felicia Hatcher, and Derek Pearson, who are the co-founders of the Center for Black Innovation, right? Or I remember, bringing a program here called the Babson Women Innovating Now Lab, focused specifically on women entrepreneurs, or starting the Idea Center at Miami-Dade College, right? These are all efforts around trying to reach out across the community to provide opportunities. And then lastly, I see sort of institutional, that as we think about, for example, you yourself as an example, right? Going off to the Miami-Dade College, Honors College, and then going off to FIU. Being sure that we're providing ways in which that those opportunities are available across the community, even more than they are right now, right? And so whether that's around the cost of tuition and affordability, whether it's around access, right? I mean, I remember talking to friends who are students at the Idea Center at Miami-Dade College. And I remember one friend, Arturo, telling me that he was taking a bus from Kendall 1.5 hours each day to get there.
Yeah, those stories are very common in
right? And so that creates real barriers, right? In this case, I was talking to Arturo, and sort of he had figured it out, right? To be able to get to the Idea Center, and which had unlocked a whole bunch of opportunities for him. And now he's actually living up in the Boston area, where he's been doing stuff with Harvard, right? Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
But think of many people where the prospect of catching the bus and going an hour and a half every day is just like,
it's not possible.
Not possible. Now, one is just like, I can't get in a place where I'm willing to do that every day. Another is I can't do it. I need to be home helping with things, around the house. And so we need to be sure, that's what it's sort of getting at, sort of this institutional level. We need to be sure that we're removing those barriers.
Right. And that's one of the things that I had thought about this episode. We had, in our last episode, we had talked about with a new urbanist about sprawl. And so which is that idea of that we have here in Miami-Dade County, people are living in the West and working in the East. And so now we have this huge traffic issue that people deal, and we see it only in Dade, and people are just so fed up with it. Right. And so when I hear about like all of this innovation and the fact that Miami becomes a tech hub, I see that there's like this emphasis and focus on the city of Miami, which isn't really Miami-Dade County. There's people, when I say you live in city of Miami versus Miami-Dade County, they don't get it. But city of Miami is kind of like Brickell, The Grove, downtown, Liberty City. That's Miami. And then you have Doral, that's no longer Miami. So are we doing something? And I know you mentioned that the Beacon Council is for Greater Miami. So in your role as vice president, are you guys thinking about how do we also attract these kind of opportunities of making Miami-Dade a tech hub and bringing opportunities to South Dade, for example, where like perfect example for what you were just talking about, Arturo, that was coming from Kendall. Like, how can they access it without having to take an hour and a half bus? Because reality is we don't have the infrastructure in place to move or even to sustain this population growth right now. So how can we?
Well, number one, it has to be a regional effort, right? I mean, I think there are two thoughts. One, just like your new urbanist guest talked about, the fact of developing density in the downtown core, but also density in other sort of outlying cities around the urban core is really important, right? That trend needs to continue as an important one. And we need to find ways to deal with the affordability issues that can come with that. But having that sort of proximity is really important. Also very important from a community level, also from a sustainability level too. Right. The whole idea of sort of having 15-minute cities where people have most of what they want in close proximity. Now, on the other hand, and I think you can reconcile both of these. On the other hand, we need to be operating on a regional basis, right? Across, and I would even go beyond just Dade. I mean, obviously in my role at Beacon Council, this is just, Greater Miami, Miami-Dade County. But I would include Broward and even going up in Palm Beach, because we think about this whole region, particularly as it relates to innovation, you and South Florida, that in terms of innovation, you really have a really compelling story, right? Chewy is up in Broward, right? That is part of the South Florida Miami ecosystem, right? The ed tech company Nearpod, Magic Leap which continues to push forward. Obviously, there have been some bumps in the road, but continues to push forward. That's in Plantation. Modernizing Medicine up in Palm Beach. Reef here in Miami, right? And Brickell, right? These are all amazing stories playing out. And so we must think about, and by the way, if you were to look at a map and go from, say, San Jose to San Francisco, that's not that much different than Miami to, say, Boca Raton, right? And so that as we talk about a place like the Silicon Valley is certainly much longer in length than going from the very bottom of Miami-Dade County to the Miami-Dade Broward line, right? It actually goes through Broward and into Palm Beach, right? Well, from Miami goes through Broward and into Palm Beach, right? So, so we need to be able to sort of capture all of that energy too. For sure, there are always going to be folks who have, you're in Shenandoah, I'm in Coconut Grove, our proximate world is where we're going to spend most of our time. Little Havana, Brickell, the Center Grove, downtown, going up to Wynwood, Little Haiti, going over to the beach, stuff like that. I mean, oftentimes that's sort of the orbit that traveling in, but we need to be thinking about the whole metropolitan area. And I think the key in all of this is creating connectivity, right? As that is just options, as I'm betting you were talking about with your new urbanist guest, that in creating connectivity through greater transportation options in particular, so that we can better link up these different parts of our community. We're already seeing some examples of that. I mean, so for example, the Bright Line. So now that you can go from Miami to Fort Lauderdale to West Palm, time certain, productive the whole way, working, right? And super comfortable, right? That's now, we're paused right now because of COVID, but it'll be back. And so that's now real, right? If you had a meeting in Fort Lauderdale for something, you can be back, you can leave in the morning, you have that meeting, you're back for lunch. Right. And so we need to create that opportunity in more places across the country, because the truth is, if you're in Homestead, you don't have that, right?
You don't. That's what I was going to say.
You're stuck on US 1.
On the east side, you're perfect. But if you're on the west side, forget it. It's still not a possibility.
And that's why I think that's something, as we think about our economic future, that's exactly the type of thing that we really need to lean in on to solve.
Right. And then before I jump into the infrastructure part of the episode, I wanted to talk about the talent pipeline. Here locally, we have residents that are their jobs and the industries that most people are in are usually in construction, the hospitality industry, retail. And it's usually they don't have the skills that these high-tech jobs require. So when we say we're going to bring in these new jobs and opportunity, economic growth, how do we make sure that locals and I also want to expand this to older people? Like, for example, people think tech and they think people like me, the millennials, the Gen Zs or Gen Ys, I don't even know what there are anymore, the young people, but we have a big community here of older people that they also want to be able to take advantage of these opportunities. So how do we make sure that they're also included and can benefit from these new jobs?
I think it's the foundation of this is around education, right? And there are multiple layers, right? There's the educational infrastructure that's set up for someone like yourself. Dade Honors, the Miami-Dade College Honors College, FIU, right? There's that. There's also in thinking about sort of when you're past that, or if you didn't even go through that stretch, having ways to gain skills, right? Say if you never finished college and having ways to gain skills, like we've seen coding boot camps launch here, like WinCode and IronHack. We need a whole lot more of that. Yeah. Right. And even there are ways in which, that a little bit longer form programs to build those skills even further. We need a lot more of that. Certificate programs, where if you're trying to get a specific skill in something. The other day, I was talking to the founder of Apprende Institute, which is all about helping people upskill with gaining a skill and working in a nail salon, or gaining a skill and learning how to install solar panels, right? We need, and making that where it's something that people can do on their own time. That is, if childcare responsibilities have, they're working a job and they can still gain these new skills, right? And of course, then dealing with the affordability issue, right? So that's number two, I think, is doing that in a big way, so people mid-career can gain these new jobs and gain the skills for these jobs that are beginning to present themselves. That's number two. Number three, I really think that, particularly as it relates to tech, we need to be leaning in a big way to expanding the capacity of our university system, which will then, that's a bit longer term play, right? But over time, that will provide a way in which more people, just like you, going through FIU or or wherever it might be, at Miami-Dade College. So continuing the work of expanding the capability and reach of our universities, and so that they can provide opportunities across our community to gaining new skills. And then, as we think an even longer term play is, I do wonder about, and so much of this is happening already, but leaning in even further in K through 12 around sort of building, particularly as it's around tech education,
right?
Coding, for all of that, right? I was listening to a talk the other day, or someone was talking about how going forward, really, it's around artificial intelligence and building education in that space, machine learning, analytics, all of that is going to be so important for people to have the skills for the jobs that are coming along. Well, thinking about actually having those sorts of learnings, the foundations of those learnings in K through 12. So I think it's sort of a layered approach. Obviously, for us here, we're interested in the here and now.
Right.
And so,
but it's true. You do need, if we're gonna become a next tech hub, it needs to be sustainable, and you need to look at it in that layered approach. But yeah, I'm really interested in hearing about the here and now, because here and now we're already dealing with people are coming in. So how do we benefit from that?
Yeah. No. I think the here and now is really around that continuing to expand our options for short-term programs for people to build skills, to be able to gain jobs right now, with whether they're well-funded startups like Arif that are doing a lot of hiring, or whether there are, or even we just had the finance company Blackstone is opening an office, hiring 200 people in downtown Miami with tech skills, being sure that we have ways in which people right now are able to gain skills to get a job like that. Furthermore, just yesterday I was having a conversation about the idea of trying to find ways to expand apprenticeships here. I mean, I think, broadly speaking, that's that's been something that's embraced more in Europe than in the US. But nevertheless, because one of the rubs is people are getting the training, but then employers are looking for people with a bit more experience. And so then how do you bridge that gap, right? And apprenticeships is one thought as a way to do it, but it might require, but for a lot of companies, they don't have the time or the resources to do that. So sometimes it requires interventions to help solve for that. And those are the types of things we need to be thinking about right now.
And then, so my last question, which I'll use to end this show, is,
it's been so much fun.
I know. It's super interesting, and I really do think that it requires a lot more talk. But what I'm wondering is, how can we take advantage of all of this opportunity where there's going to be an increase in revenues for our community? How could we use that money to kind of address some of these issues, which is infrastructure? Like how could we use that to fund public transportation, or how can we use that to afford affordable housing and train locals, so that there is a talent pipeline that is using local residents here?
I think it's doing what you just said, right? It is making a priority right now that, wherever those pressure points are, to deliver on those things. So if it's public transportation, really, I mean, that's something that our elected leadership has to grapple with, right? And deliver on. Let's be sure we're prioritizing this and really pressuring them to make sure this is happening, right? And there are different ways to do that. I mean, look at the Group Transit Alliance, which has made it, right? Which did a whole master plan for our bus routes here, across the whole metropolitan area of Miami, and really putting that at the top of our agenda, right? So that's number one, right? Number two, maybe it's around sustainability, right? If that's something that speaks to you, right? And sort of this moment, do we need to be doing things right now, or not, right? Or in job training, thinking about where are sort of the places that need to turn to ensure that we're expanding job training efforts, right? That can be through government, that can be through nonprofits, that can also be, one of the things is better sort of mapping out what's there. Because sometimes I find there's even just a disconnect. Like, for example, I'll be talking to an employer and they'll say, there's no talent. And then like 3 hours later, I'll be talking to someone like yourself and they might say, there are no jobs.
Yeah.
And I'll think to myself, wait a second, we need to, and some of that is just through greater transparency. So people are better able to understand what's where. And that's a way to solve for it. But I think what do we do with this moment? We lean in, right? And we understand it's on us. It's on each one of us. And we have the ability to think about, how do we solve this? How do we figure this out, right? How do we unlock the possibility of this moment? And what are those steps we need to take?
And I would also add, not only is it on us to lean in, but to also like say to like our elected officials, hey, this is important to us. And just like a lot of people are saying, well, it's Francis Suarez, the mayor, is talking on Twitter to all of these companies, but hi, like the residents also want to hear like, how are you going to help on local issues? So
100%. And I think the mayor, obviously he's working very hard to recruit from across the country, which is so important. Mm-hmm. But I think he also, cares deeply about our community too. And I don't think those need to be
exclusive.
I don't think those need to be. I think Miami is built on doing both. Miami is built on being a place where, we love our neighbors and we welcome the new arrivals, right, with open arms. And I think we can do that. But to your point, though, I think we all need to be sure that as we think about this moment, that this is not a moment that, that we're not having one group come in at the expense of the others.
Of the others, yeah.
Right. But honestly, this problem was here before. I mean, we had huge inequities, huge social and economic disparities. This risks worsening it, but this problem is already here. So we need to be leaning in on this problem. We need to be leaning on this problem before, and we need to continue doing it right now. Yeah. I loved but I think for each one of us, I loved what you told me, what you said, what your parents told you. Right? I love it. And I said, if you don't have anything to do, invent something. Right? That's the Miami hustle. And I think that's, in this moment, that's what's called on each of us.
Yeah, completely agree. I love how you ended that. So with that, I'm not even going to add anymore. Just going to end our episode, and thank you so much for your time and for sharing some of your insight. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this develops. And whenever you want, just come back and let us know any updates. And for everyone else, I want to thank you so much for your time and for tuning in.
Oh, Camilla, thank you so much. I so enjoyed it. Thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, same here. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.